Hi everyone. I am overjoyed today because I ended up having a day off I wasn't planning on having, and I have a really um, full schedule, and so getting the chance to have a day off is like such a gift when it happens. And I thought it would be kind of perfect, since I have a few hours I wasn't planning on doing anything in, to make a video about a subject that I've wanted to do a video on for such a long time, but haven't, just for whatever reasons it ends up being like the last thing on the list to make videos for, and so it never gets done. But it's one of those ones that's like super close to my heart and makes me just like so happy to be making this video right now. So what I want to talk about is various creative outlets, artistic outlets that mean a great deal to me on my spiritual path. In this video and the next few videos kind of in this series. And sorry guys, that's the heater. In this video, something in my eye. In this video, I'm going to talk about music that's greatly impacted my life, and most especially my spiritual path. So this is music that has deep meaning for me, and that at various points on my spiritual path have really profoundly impacted the direction I'm taking, but also processing of whether that's shadow work or wounds, whatever you are going through and processing on your path. And music is a huge deal to me. I very rarely don't have music on, and it's a huge way that I process through the lyrics. So to me, there's this like very beautiful kind of flow and connection between poetry and songwriting. Excuse me, guys. Hold on one sec. Need water for this. So there's a beautiful connection between poetry and songwriting, lyrics to me. I do not think they're the same thing. So I do have to say that I do think that they're different. And the reason why is because when you're reading poetry, and this is certainly just a layman's understanding of why it's different, like this is just how it feels to me. When I'm reading poetry, there's a cadence to the sentences, the lines as I go through. So there's a rhythm to how you're reading when you're reading written poetry. But lyrics are actually meant to be sung to the music that accompanies the song. And so there is a different flow to that, I think. And one of the albums I'm going to show you, it's been interesting over the years because I am like a music nerd, a music geek, I guess, whatever you want, whatever term is appropriate there. Insert token phrase there. I do a lot of research on the artists who are writing the lyrics, what has motivated them, what's drawn them in. And a couple of the albums I'm going to show you, the songwriters really aren't always thinking about the lyrics making sense, but more how words feel when strung together. And we can certainly see that in poets like E. E. Cummings, etc., who play with the sound, the feel of the words, as well as the given meaning for a word. So that juxtaposition is fascinating to me, and over the years has meant a lot as I process through listening to music. So even though these are not spiritual albums, to me they are more spiritual than if I put on someone's guided meditation, if that makes sense. And for those of you who find that to be the most powerful, like, more power to you. I love that. But for me, it's all about music. So I should start by saying that my mother was an artist, a very gifted artist, and the music that we listened to when I was very little, before we joined the cult that I grew up in, when I was very, very little, so I'm talking about like infancy to like three or four. She listened to a lot of trad or traditional goth music, new wave, punk. She was really kind of out there with her music choices because she was creating these works of art, and the music really flowed with the creation of her art. So I definitely grew up exposed to not the popular music that was going on at that time. More like Talking Heads before they hit it big. The Cure was a huge influence. Bands like Joy Division, Bauhaus, early U2, very early U2, like late 70s, very early 80s U2, not anything that came after that really. And so listening to these bands like at a very formative age really influenced what I like as sound. So I'm prefacing this with that because this might not be your genre of music and it might not speak to you at all. And you might be like, Racine, how can you have a spiritual experience listening to that album? However, they have been those experiences for me. And I'm going to kind of talk a little bit about some seminal albums for me, albums that really have made a difference for me as I process over the years. So I have a few of those albums with me and I can show you the covers. I'm going to talk about a few that I do not have the albums with me. And that's probably because they're in storage right now. So some of them you'll have to do some research on if you feel guided to go down that pathway. But I think I want to start talking about this, which I have now spent 6 minutes not talking about this as I get into this. You guys know how I am. I think I want to start with The Cure. And I want to start with The Cure because their music is like probably one of the biggest deals to me. So the beautiful thing about the band is that it's had huge changes over the decades. But Robert Smith, he's obviously core to the group, right? And so in Gothland, he's the goth father. He's like a big deal, right? He created, like, he didn't create, but he helped to create an entire movement and a way of life for a lot of people, or a way of expressing life for a lot of people. So there's been a lot of different sounds that he's explored throughout the years too. He has not held himself to the sound that seemed to make him money. So what I love is that I can listen to The Cure from 1981 and it sounds totally different than The Cure from, trying to fix this, than 1997. So I love the fact that I get to explore with him and different albums are going to give me different experiences. So one of the most powerful albums for me is, let's see, this is their 1982 album, Pornography. So Robert was really, at least in my opinion, exploring a lot of shadow self in this album. And by that I mean the side of yourself that will kind of kill something or end something or finish something before you've given it a chance, that will look at things in the negative light before it turns to the positive. And the kind of darkness that we can experience within those negative mental loops that we can get stuck in. Robert, I think, was really exploring that in this album. And, you know, some of the lyrics in this album really can take you to a place of understanding. Kind of, you know, what I would say is that it's an understanding of, like, the fact that you're in that space. That's what this album gives me. So let me just show you, some of the lyrics that, yeah, so see, so from the song 100 Years, or 100 Years, which is one of my favorite songs by The Cure, some of the lyrics: caressing an old man and painting a lifeless face, just a piece of new meat in a clean room, the soldiers close in under a yellow moon, all shadows and deliverance under a black flag, 100 years of blood, crimson, the ribbon tightens round my throat, I open my mouth and my head bursts open. So there's a lot of ways you could take that, and I'm aware of that. But I think if you are in a space of depression or darkness and trying to find your way out of that, that the music on this album is very helpful for acknowledging where you are and looking at your part in creating a continued holding of space for that energy. So, like, realizing how you're keeping yourself stuck and how you can move through. And I've really found this album to be profound for that. Also, from a musical standpoint, some of the bass lines in this album and the synth work in this album are beautiful. Like, not what you would expect, I think he was really shifting his sound in this album and exploring, again, some really dark places within himself. Here's Siamese Twins. Here's a little bit of the lyrics there. I chose an eternity of this, like falling angels, the world disappeared, laughing into the fire. Is it always like this? So you get this kind of really raw emotion expressed, and it can encourage and help you to move through some of those things yourself. And the beauty of an album is that the music itself will kind of like push you through it and create a really powerful space to come out of the other side of that as well. So you have a choice at the end of this album if you want to stay in that kind of dark place, or if you want to shift your perspective and move through. So like if I was going to give you a tarot card to equate this album with, it would be the Hanged Man. And I think it's a beautiful album for that. It's also just a gorgeous listen as well. And I like to journey / meditate to music with lyrics, and this is one of those ones that's like seminal for me. It's really, it's a big deal for me. I first listened to this album I think I was probably 17 the first time I heard this album, and because of the title of the album, I couldn't show my parents that I had it. But I did have my car, and so I hid this album in my car, underneath my car seat, for 2 years. And it was totally worth it. It was totally worth it. This album is magnificent. It's just magnificent. So that album is Pornography by The Cure. If you're a vinyl person like myself now, my partner and I have started collecting vinyl. You can find this one that on as a record, as an LP, and it doesn't cost you an arm and a leg, which I was like deeply thankful for. So, Pornography by The Cure. So the next album by The Cure is called Disintegration. This is one of their most popular albums, and it's a great place to start with The Cure if you're new to them and you haven't really taken a journey with them yet. This is an album that you might want to start your journey with. So it is a trad goth sound, as in, and by that I mean like Pornography. It has, a heavier, deeper, denser tone to it. But it's also very listener friendly. So it's a little softer than some of their earlier stuff. And it does contain the song Love Song, which is one of their most popular songs. And pretty much everybody knows. I don't even have to say anything else. You've probably heard that song, even if you think you've never heard of The Cure before. So, and can I just show you, because I have to show you that, I have to show you Robert. Look at him. He's so cute. I can't even, there are no words for how much I love Robert Smith. So, this album is much more, I think, if you're in a space of processing relationships or learning about emotionally for yourself where you tend to withdraw and shy away from being vulnerable, or opening up and sharing with another person / other people, this album is a great place to start for that. So it can really kind of move you through a lot of intense feeling. And it's interesting because it starts almost more optimistic than it ends, and yet the way that this album ends feels almost like a calm awareness of the journey, and understanding that whether you're having an experience that you feel is positive or negative, there's a purpose to it. And this album really kind of doesn't need to explain that. It more just allows you to feel that. It allows you to feel that. So what I'm going to do is, let's see. pull out, here we go. It also has Pictures of You on it, which is another huge hit for them, and Lullaby. So it's a very popular Cure album. I'm gonna read you the entirety of Plain Song because I have been listening to this album since I was born. Well, no, I'm sorry, since it came out after I was born. I shouldn't say that. Since it came out, my mother played this. Even after we joined the religion that we did, she would still listen to The Cure. Like, it was one of the few things that she wasn't able to give up completely. So, since this album came out, I've been listening to it. And Plain Song is one that will still make me cry every time I hear it. In a really positive way, though, not a negative way. I think it's dark and it looks like rain, you said. And the wind is blowing like it's the end of the world, you said. And it's so cold, it's like the cold if you were dead. And then you smiled for a second. I think I'm old and I'm feeling pain, you said. And it's all running out like it's the end of the world, you said. And it's so cold, it's like the cold if you were dead. And then you smiled for a second. Sometimes you make me feel like I'm living at the edge of the world. Like I'm living at the edge of the world. It's just the way I smile, you said. So this one, this album is really, really essential for me. I always have it in multiple forms and on anything I'm going to be listening to so that I can kind of hitch into this whenever I need to. There's a comfort to music, especially I'm finding as I get older, albums that have really walked with me through a lot, that you go back to time and time again. There's like such a deep comfort to them, and you find that you go to different songs at different times for different reasons. So, and I say that because, let's see, the last two tracks on this album, Homesick and Untitled, when I first started listening to this album, like as I think like when I was 12 or 13, and like listening to it for me, not just because my mom had the record on or whatever, I found that I avoided those last two tracks. Like I didn't listen to them a lot, and I think it's because I just wasn't in a place to really understand them. And then when I hit 19 and I was trying to find a way out of where I was, and what I was seeing as an untenable future, those two songs I listened to all the time. I would just get in my car and drive and listen to those two songs. So, and now in my 30s, wow, there's like this, I listen to those two songs and it doesn't make me want to run away or support me in feeling like I want to run away. Instead, they help me to understand why I choose to stay. So there's this beauty of the lyrics and the composition of music, the sound to the music that speaks to us, that really just is such a big deal. I don't know how else to say it. Like it's huge. And this album is one of those albums that I don't know if I can describe how much I love this album. And it's just not like I'll always listen to this album. This is one of those albums I'll always listen to. The beauty of the music in this album too, because it kind of has that flow through the emotions throughout, it can be really nice for if you're someone who likes to move the body to process emotions. It's beautiful for dance to actually move your body to, and it's also great for, I would say, for if you're doing kind of journey work or meditation. This is also a nice one to put on and to kind of move through the songs as landscapes. The other Cure album, which I do not have a copy of right now, because in order to get the vinyl edition, it's like $300 used. So I will have to be patient for that one and bide my time, is the Wish album. It's my most favorite Cure album of all time. And if you had to say to me, like, Racing, you can only listen to one Cure album for the rest of your life, it would be the Wish album. So the Wish album, my mom listened to again in studio. At that point, when that album came out, we were like just on the cusp of joining the religion that we joined. And so she played the album, but then we didn't hear the album for a very, very, very long time. We didn't hear that album. And I'm telling this story for a reason. So when I kind of started listening to The Cure on my own, like I said, 12, 13, but really 14, 15, I, was working and had some money, and so purchased the album myself, and it was like discovering this new, first of all, Cure, but also like this whole new, I don't know, it was just one of those albums where I was like, oh my god, I really love these guys. Like, I'm not just listening to them because it feels like home, I'm listening to them because I actually really love them, not just because I grew up listening to them. And then my mother had shared with me that she loved the track From the Edge of the Deep Green Sea off of that album. And for years after that, I couldn't listen to that track. So I have had a difficult relationship with my mother, and from the get-go. And so her having she had such a deep connection to that song, and she shared that with me, and I was very grateful to her for sharing that with me. But personally, for me, it just made me think about her and not about the music. And so for years and years and years, I was not able to listen to From the Edge of the Deep Green Sea. And then in my mid-20s, I had a series of miscarriages, and I would put that album on, and From the Edge of the Deep Green Sea took on a totally different meaning for me. And now it's one of those tracks that, like, if I put that album on, I absolutely am going to play that track. And it's one of those tracks that I get a very, very clear visual, whether it's what Robert was intending when he wrote the lyrics for that song or not. The visual on that song for me is so clear, that the images that I see when I listen to that song are so clear. And it's been such a healing experience for me in regards to motherhood, both in relation to my mom and understanding her as a person, not just as an archetype, but also myself as a mom, how I was going to be interacting with that archetype of mother through a song that's about a couple, not a mother. I mean, it's like that's the beauty of music and art as a way of offering us healing in a really powerful, just awesome way. It's just awesome to me. So it's awe-inspiring, really. So From the Edge of the Deep Green Sea from the Wish album is key and core for me. Other tracks off of that album that have meant a great deal to me over the years, the Trust track from there, as relationships have fallen apart, kind of going back to that place, like looking at the roots of like where did we make choices in this? Where do we make choices? Not about the fallout at the end, but the choices that led to the fallout. So, that track has been really impactful for me over the last few years, but I loved that track when I was a teenager. I used to play that all the time. And I think it was really as a way of trying to understand my parents at that time. The opening track for the Wish album, which is, I can't remember the title of it off the top of my head, but it's the opening track. It's Cut or Open. It might actually be Open. I think it's Open. That track is just one of my all-time favorites to move my body to listen to, but also to exploring addiction, but not just addiction, exploring why we are so uncomfortable being seen by other people. And so that track is awesome for that for me. And when I'm in a really bad place personally or in my own mind, I'll play that entire album, but that track especially will just kind of like get me to move enough to be like, can I shift this? Can I explore this in a different way? Do I have to stay in this space with it? So, and then of course that album has the Friday I'm in Love single off of it, which pretty much everybody knows about, very popular song. Super cute song, not why I listened to that album at all, but very cute song. I think the meat of that album is really, again, exploring relationships and exploring settling, but also choices that we make in relationships. And so, and by relationships, I don't just mean with significant others, even though I do think that's the focus. I also think we are looking at, relationships with family members as well, at least for me when I listen to that album. The sound of that is a very driven sound on that album, and it makes me move. It's not one I listen to and sit still, even if I'm in the car driving, like I'm moving my body while I listen to that album. Okay, so new day, actually new snow day, because we're having yet another storm in March here in Portland, and in New England, and so I have another unexpected day off, and I can actually finish making this video, which I've been, like, as you all know, so excited to do. Anyhow, so we kind of ended with The Cure as far as that installation and piece of how specific Cure albums have impacted my spiritual path and helped me with a lot of self-work and healing and understanding all of that. So now we're going to talk about the big guns. Well, The Cure, they are, Robert Smith is a big gun, let's face it. But I want to talk about Tori Amos and her music. So, and I'm going to pull out this album. Tori's music is a huge deal for me. A lot of you know I talk about her work a lot in my any videos I do, especially around shadow work or looking at pieces and parts of ourselves that make us uncomfortable. And so I discovered her music when I was 17, and my first introduction to her was her first album, even though that had come out in 1991. And when I was 17, I don't know, it was like 2001, 2002, I don't know, it was somewhere around there. Anyhow, and I was amazed at the truth in her lyrics, not only the beauty of the music, but what I was hearing her talk about and express and explore. A lot of the same things that I had experienced in my life, and at that point in time didn't have a way to talk to anyone about them or understand even those experiences. And so listening to her albums and the themes that were explored were extremely cathartic and healing for me. So she talks a lot about growing up in intensely religious environments, dealing with sexual abuse, with rape. She also talks about, over the years with her albums, miscarriage, starting families, exploring all of the ways that we hold ourselves back, beat ourselves up, don't believe in ourselves. And she also really explored bringing in the sacred masculine in albums like Voice for Pele, which is like an essential Tori album. If you work with if you want to listen to Tori at all in regards to your spiritual path, I really recommend starting with Voice for Pele. And also it was through her that I discovered Joseph Campbell, and it was through her that I discovered working with archetypes and myth as a way of understanding oneself and one's journey and healing, and also shifting through things too, not needing to stay the same, but allowing yourself to be able to grow, to expand, to shift, and to see things from a wider perspective. So Voice for Pele is is incredible. There's not even another Tori album like this. Like this album, she relationship ended, and she really looked at the ways that she was defecating on herself, the ways that she was giving her power away, and also the ways that she was not only annihilating the sacred feminine within herself, but also the sacred masculine, and calling that in. It's a very long album. I do recommend that you sit and listen to it the first time that you're listening to it, and not have it on and do 5 other things while you're listening to it, but really listen to the lyrics, because she takes you on a journey. You start the album, you go down into the underworld, then you come back up, you go to different places. It's looking at those things really honestly, and offering yourself healing. There are other characters that you meet in the album, And all of these things are very nuanced, and so it's about really sitting with it, and then from there journeying and exploring what you find to be kind of your journey as well with it. Not kind of, but your journey as well. It's a beautiful soundtrack to go with that. As I said, I'm a huge Tori fan. One of the quotes that really has made a huge difference for me is, you have to crawl into your wounds in order to heal them. Like, you cannot ignore them. You have to go into it. And so Voice for Pele from the Choir Girl Hotel is another album where she was really crawling into her wounds, and she was super honest about it. Her first album, Little Earthquakes, again, is very confessional and very personal, and really looking at especially the rape aspect. And there's a lot of power in that album too. Under the Pink talks about ways in which women kind of will compete against each other and hurt each other and fight against each other. And so that album is very soft compared to Little Earthquakes or Voice for Pele, but is exploring a very kind of cutthroat, vicious aspect of being feminine, being a woman, and how we all kind of play into that, and how we can look at that and start to, again, integrate and heal within ourselves. It's all very, very powerful work, her music, especially in regards to personal accountability and going inside of yourself. Another album of hers that really transformed my life was Scarlet's Walk. It's a very different sounding album than Voice for Pele. So you have to understand, like, every album Tori makes sounds different. So there's not like a Tori sound other than she's playing the piano. Scarlet's Walk, it was huge for me. It's one that I had in the car, and I would listen to and just drive and listen to that. And she tells the story of a woman's journey across America. And she tells it through the voice of America. And for me, it was really, she tells it through the voice of Scarlet, but also through the voice of America as well. It's a road trip album. So it's really meant to put it in, and driving is perfect for it. But what was really profound for me is, so when that album came out, I think I was 18 when that album came out. And so I have to remember, like, I was uncovering all of these different layers with archetype and myth from her earlier albums while I was still living in a religious situation I grew up in at home. And so all of that was happening, like, secretly underneath the layers, and I was, doing research on my own, and going to the library, finding books, and doing all this stuff, and not sharing it, just kind of on my own journey. And Scarlet's Walk came out, and it was an album that I could play out in front of my parents, and nobody realized, like, what she was talking about, because it's very soft sounding and orchestral, and it's a very long album. And I could also play the sheet music, and no one knew what I was playing and what Tori was speaking to in the album. And it was also my first real exposure to Native American traditions, because in the journey across America, Scarlet visits in certain tribes and medicine women in certain tribes, and also Tori is she has Native American blood in her DNA and in her ancestral line as well, and so it's something that she really speaks to in a lot of the interviews from that time. The spiritual traditions, and it's the first time I had heard words like medicine wheel and sage, and connecting with the grandmothers, and working with these various shamanic elements as well. So her music is very special to me because it's in a lot of ways my first exposure to my own spiritual path, was through listening to her music and being like, wow, I don't understand this from my current perspective, but it's really resonating with me as a truth. And then going off and exploring that. So Scarlet's Walk was a huge album for me as far as opening up to Native American traditions, and also listening to the voice of the land, like realizing that and really letting myself hear that personally as well. What does that voice sound like to me? Not just what it sounds like to Tori, but what does the voice of this land sound like to me? And really looking at it not as something to be subjugated, or as something without a voice, but something with a voice and a spirit and an energy. and like I said, was a very profound album for me. It's also a beautiful one to listen to if you are high anxiety, and trying to meditate and come off of, let's say, PTSD, anxiety, any type of, attacks or things like that that you find when your body is responding to something from the past and it's taking over, and you need to like come down back into your body and realize that you're in the present moment. That's a beautiful album to put on because it's very gentle and like sweeping, and so there's no huge highs and dips in the sound from track to track. It's very melodic, and the thread is continued throughout each song, in my opinion. So I found that very helpful over the years when I have an anxiety attack or something like that, to put Scarlet's Walk on. Another Tori album that had a huge impact on my spiritual journey was American Doll Posse in 2007. I was coming out of things in a lot of ways, but I was still stuck. And that album really moved me into understanding what it is to be a feminist, and also to understand that I can have a say in what's going on around me, whether that happens to be politically or personally. So it was a very, very much an album about finding my own voice, and also realizing that there are different selves within the self, that I don't just have to be the identity that makes my partner or my parents happy or the people in my life, but I could also explore aspects of myself that I hadn't let see the light of day. And that's because in American Doll Posse, she's exploring 5 different women within one woman. And so there are actual storylines for each woman, and live for that tour, she was 2 different women each night. And so there was like, and sometimes she was 3 on occasion, or 4. So there was like a real sexualness to that album, an exploration of sensuality and sexuality, what it means to be a woman and to be a feminist, and to explore those sides of the self too, that you can explore the soft piece as well, and not just be a badass, and still be a feminist and still be standing up for what you believe in. And so I found that really empowering. So that album had a huge impact on me. And Tori's she has many, many albums out there, so this is in no way like these are the only albums that matter to me. All of them do. I learned something from all of them, but these especially. So Little Earthquakes, just because it was the first album, not because it's my favorite Tori album. It's not, but it was the first exposure I had to her. A friend of my brother and I had the album in his car one day, and he had played it for me, and he was like, look, I think you're gonna like this song, Precious Things. And I heard that, like, it was playing and people were talking, and I just remember stopping and being like, oh my God, someone just put my experience down into a song. Like, the sound, the lyrics, all of it, this is my life, and she's playing it. And it was like this huge, it was a very, very powerful moment with music for me. So again, Little Earthquakes, Boys for Pele is my number 1. From the Choir Girl Hotel, if you are someone who's experiencing miscarriage or loss of any kind, or know that loss is on its way to you, From the Choir Girl Hotel is a deeply healing album looking at loss of a loved one. Scarlet's Walk, again, huge game changer for me. And then American Doll Posse was a huge game changer as well. I should also mention The Beekeeper. It doesn't get a lot of love, but you all will hear me talk about The Sweet Within the Sting all the goddamn time. The Beekeeper and the accompanying book, Piece by Piece, both of those things really changed and assisted me in changing my core beliefs about myself. And so even though that album is not my favorite to listen to, like I don't play that one through a great deal, individual tracks I love and adore on that album. And I do feel that it's an album that has a lot of weight to it and a lot of worth and a lot of value. It's just not as comfortable. It's not easy listening. And structurally, as a composer, Tori was doing a lot of different things in that album that, some people aren't on board for, and I totally get, but that album was a really big deal for me. And, I think, again, we're talking about loss because her brother had just died when she was working on that album. And there's also this aspect of like going in when there's nothing. What do you do? How do you find the way out or the way in when you can't find anything? And that was very, very impactful for me. And also the book because in the book she really goes into archetypes. She really, Jean Shinoda Bolen, Joseph Campbell, these are works that she references. She talks a lot about the Magdalene. And so this was another like affirmation that this was a really beautiful way for me to live my life, and would be and continues to be deeply fulfilling for me. So Beekeeper also gets honorable mention. Other albums that have really changed my life for me over the years, Deftones' White Pony. This album my brother bought for me when I was 19 and I was leaving my parents' house. I was in the process of leaving, and it was a traumatic time for me. A lot of shit was going down, and I listened to this album all the time. It was all I listened to, over and over. I listened to Knife Party, Passenger, Change, Pink Maggot, Digital Bath, Prescription Queen, like the whole album really. But this album, I put it on and I remember that feeling of being like, I am no longer going to be told what to do, and being scared out of my mind at the same time to let go of that conditioning. Like, what was life going to look like? And I didn't really step out of it at that time, but I at least started that journey. And so this album reminds me of that feeling of, you're living out of your car and you just don't give a fuck. Like, you're gonna figure it out, but you're scared to death at the same time, even though you don't want to admit it to yourself. There's also an aspect in this album of, I think, angst and an understanding that, like, are you ever really going to be happy anyhow? Like, even if you find the person that you think you're supposed to be with, or you move and go to the place that you've always wanted to move to, or you, quit the job that you hate and start a new job. Those kind of things that you do when you're feeling really, like, on fire and like, no, I'm changing my life, I'm taking control again. And then you find after a few months, like, you tend to go right back into the loop that you thought you were breaking out of. And that can feel very frustrating and damning in a way. And this album reminds me of that feeling. It calls that to mind, but not in a bad way. Actually, in a way that's like, hey, it's just life. Like, even if you fuck up, you didn't really fuck up. You learned, just learn something. That's your job as a soul here. Just experience and learn. And so even when you think you've done the worst thing and you are the worst person, or you tried to change something and you didn't have enough strength and you didn't go all the way through with it, and so did you fail then? Or you tried it and it didn't work, did you fail? This album for me very much has that feeling of like, you know what, fuck it, I tried. And there's angst with that and anger, but also like, I tried. So this album really calls that stuff to mind, and listening to this just like takes me back to that place. And it's very, very cathartic. And like, when I put this album on, it's kind of for me wanting to connect with Sekhmet and that very fiery, filled with the passion energy. So that's Deftones' White Pony. Recently, I would say when I started the process of divorce and ending a 14-year relationship, Ray LaMontagne's Ouroboros album, which please I would recommend if you're choosing to listen to this from more of a spiritual journey context. Listen to the album all the way through. Don't break it up into individual tracks. It's really meant to be played from beginning to end as one continuous track. And I just have to show you guys like the artwork. You can see that? So beautiful. This album has, oh, and I love this on the back, guys. Look at that. So this album has, it's almost like a coming home into yourself. And in the way that White Pony was very like angsty and active with the I don't give a fuck, this is much more, you know what, it doesn't matter because it's in here. And as long as I surrender to this, it doesn't matter. It's going to all work out. And so this album very much has that feel for me. Spiritually, I love to journey with this album. And if you are someone who suffers from PTSD or has anxiety attacks, This album might be a nice way to come off of them if music is a way that helps you to do that. Now, again, me talking about all this stuff is just sharing albums that have really helped me on my spiritual path and opened me up, and been albums at like seminal periods in my life that really the music made a difference for me and was an access point into my journey. So if music doesn't appeal to you, don't put this on when you're having an anxiety attack. But if you are someone who the music will help bring you down, this is, for me, a great album for that. The other albums recently that have greatly impacted me at this time. Here we go. My partner and I, he introduced me to the National, and it was, oh, wrong way, sorry guys. It was Love at First Sight for me. Yeah, no wait, I did have that right. Hold on, wait, I gotta look at this now. It's supposed to look like this. There we go. As I crookedly hold it. This is High Violet, and the album that's really been with me now for the last few months is Trouble Will Find Me. It's made a huge difference for me as I process co-parenting with multiple parents, and, you know, also what does love look like, and what is vulnerability, and what do you do when you are in transition and you felt like you were at a time when you thought you should have had everything figured out, but you're starting from the beginning. Like, Trouble Will Find Me has very much been about that. High Violet will always remind me of falling in love and opening up to something and saying, you know what, I'm going to be vulnerable and do this even though I am scared. And so High Violet will always have that very powerful feeling of choosing to love again. So High Violet's very special to me. And the National, their sound is gorgeous. And I believe, if I remember right, that The Cure is one of their, The Cure and Joy Division are one of their inspirations for their music, and so that they in no way are knockoffs. Please, I'm not saying that at all. Like, I love the National. I have a huge thing for the National. They're going to be one of those bands I listen to for the rest of my life. But I love that there is that kind of somberness to the music like The Cure, and the fact that they love The Cure automatically means that I love them too. So, you know, fun fact there. But the National's music is very, to me, the lead singer who at least co-writes most of the songs, if not writes the lyrics for the songs, he is someone who is relentless in looking at his own shit, in my opinion. And sometimes he drowns in it, as we all do. And I love the honesty in his lyrics, but also they're not always honest. So there's like all these layers and pieces, and you kind of like, you know, you'll go like, I need to look up the lyrics to that song, and then you'll go off on this journey, like researching 5 different things that take you to this place, that take you to another place, that help you understand something else about yourself. Like, that's what I love about artists and musicians and people who really love their work and honor it, is that you can go on a journey with them that's totally your own. And Tori's music is the same way. I might go off and research, you know, because she has a cowbell in one song at the end, I might like need to go off and research cowbells, and then go to this, you know, which takes me to this place in Ireland, which then takes me to, you know, the Tuatha Dé Danann, which then takes me to another place. Like, that's what music does for me. And so it's bands like that, it's composers, musicians, artists, singer-songwriters like that really excite me, and their music opens up new worlds for me. The other album I'm going to talk about, and if you follow me on Instagram, I love this album cover, and I kind of post it all the time, and I should probably stop posting it so much, but I can't help myself, I love it. Interpol is an interesting band. I don't love all their music, but the songs that I love, I can't stop listening to. And on this album, the song Pioneer to the Falls and the song The Lighthouse, I just want to show you this. Isn't that gorgeous? Are songs that really, really mean a great deal to me. There's also another song on here. It might be Wrecking Ball that I really enjoy as well. I can't remember the title right now. But this again, I don't tend to listen to this album all the way through. This is an album, this is an artist, a group of artists, a band where I pick which songs matter to me. But the ones that do are a huge part of my spiritual journey. So The Lighthouse, Pioneer to the Falls, and the song Hands Away and Leif Erikson from their first album, which was, if I can find it here, if it's not their first, it was like their big hit, Turn on the Bright Lights. So from this album, Untitled, Hands Away, The New, and Leif Erikson really were huge for me. I discovered them last year, and as I was finalizing the divorce and I moved so many times last year, which was in a lot of ways really ripped me open, but was also incredibly difficult for me. I'm a Taurus and we love to have a home, and not having that while transitioning through ending a very long-term relationship was really fucking hard, I'm not gonna lie. And Interpol's music like really pushed me to the edge and helped me jump off when I needed to cry, but I wasn't letting myself cry. And so incredible band. Again, I don't listen to the albums all the way through, but the songs I love have made a big difference for me. And I'm going to finish with U2's Boy. I love old U2, not newer U2, but the Boy album has this, it's one of their first albums. It might be their first, if I remember right. Sorry guys, I forgot to turn the ringer off my phone. This album is very Celtic to me, like in a weird, I mean, that's obviously, but the feel of it, the sound of it reminds me of the ocean and islands and rock face cliffs and that kind of like exposure to the elements. And this is another album that my mom listened to when I was very young in the studio all the time, and so it has a lot of those feelings for me. It brings back like the scent of turpentine and clay and the tools that she would be using, whether that was a mallet and chisel or she was painting at that time. It brings back a lot of memories of childhood and helps me to connect with that feeling you have when you're little, when something's really magical and you're very in the moment, and it's not about like what's happened or what do I need to explore here, but just being in the moment. So Boy does that for me. So that like gets honorable mention. And then some of you guys know I'm a huge jazz person, like huge. I fucking love jazz. And Mingus, Charles Mingus, is a big deal to me. Again, like on Instagram, I tend to, Mingus is everything all the time. But Mingus Plays Piano is a really, really beautiful, beautiful album. And even the title track, I mean, even the titles to the tracks will get you in this place of like feeling. It's just pure feeling when you listen to this album. Myself When I Am Real, I Can't Get Started, Body and Soul, Orange Was the Color of Her Dress, Then Silk Blues, Old Portrait. I mean, just, it's everything that lets you be present and just feel. No attachments, just feeling. So Mingus Plays Piano is, there are no words how much I love this album and how much it means to me spiritually on my path. And also, my son loves this album. Oh my god, my phone is blowing up. I'm so sorry, guys. My son loves this album, and so that is a way that we connect spiritually as well. It's a very elemental album. And so if you're someone who's drawn to jazz or who's looking for, there's no voice, there's no singing, it's not a, it's not a heavy album, it's not strong jazz, it's very, very soft and melodic. And so if you're looking for something like that to meditate with, this is an awesome album for that too. It's great for meditation and journeying. So I have made a super ass long video. I haven't even talked about all the albums that have mattered to me over the years. But I do, I was so excited to do this because music is such a huge way that I process and explore my own path, both spiritually and my earth path and the marriage of the two. And so sharing this has been something I've wanted to do for some time, and I'm super happy that I finally got the chance to do it. So thank you, 15 inches of snow and nonstop phone. Anyhow, as always, guys, thanks for putting up with me. It's wonderful to spend time with you. So, I am sending you all much love and many blessings. As always, guys, see you in the next video.